probably the first album I sat down and really went, oh shit, I'm being moved by that. Like, I like stuff that makes me feel. And Nebraska, I could relate to those people in a way I hadn't related to his other material, just partially. I mean, my dad had once seen Charles Starkweather. Is that the guy's name? Killing spree guy. My dad had been to a prison and in his role as a principal or something. I don't know. Anyway, and somebody said, hey, there's Charles Starkweather. So these are Midwest people. I felt more connected to those stories. And I had gotten a little older. I was an angsty, 18-year-old, probably when I discovered Nebraska, something like that. It just moved me incredibly. And I was stuck after that. I love Born in the USA. And Tunnel of Love, I think, is maybe his most underappreciated record. I still pop that one on quite a bit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Lessing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. And joining me tonight is another in my series of the small, I guess a bigger circle than I thought. There is a subset of Bruce Springsteen fans and comic book professionals, and there is the circle, kind of they intersect. I have Ande Parks. He has done work on Green Arrow. He has done all kinds of other comic work. We are going to have to talk about his run on the Lone Ranger comic, but we are mostly here to talk about Bruce. And Ande, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. So why don't you give us your elevator pitch. Tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I've been, like you said, I started out as a comic book inker. I've been doing that for close to 30 years, I hate to say, but I think it's true. And then about 20 years ago, I started writing as well. So I've inked a lot of stuff, like you said. I tend to make my living inking guys in tights punching each other. I'm best known for Green Arrow and Nightwing. A lot of work with Phil Hester. He's like my art partner. And then I've written a bunch of graphic novels. I wrote one called Union Station, one called Capote in Kansas. I wrote a book called Ciudad that came out like 6 years ago that recently turned into the Netflix film Extraction. So that was like my big.
That's got to be cool,
yeah.
Right?
So I did a lot of podcasts around, what was that, April when that came out. So that was super cool to see something finally hit the screen after a lot of flirtations over the years. And like you said, I've written some licensed characters to Green Hornet. Really proud. I got to do 25 issues of Lone Ranger that I'm very proud of. And I'm a lifelong Kansan, and I don't know, been a big Bruce fan since somebody gave me a copy of The River when I was still in high school.
Now that's an interesting origin story as we talk about it. I saw you tweeted a sketch of Sweetness today as we're talking about this. That's I think fans of football everywhere, he was just Gale Sayers, right? He was just not Sweetness. I'm sorry, I'm thinking Walter.
Right. It's okay. I knew who you meant.
Yeah,
Those Bears.
Yes, Bears. Yes. See, I need to edit that out. I was talking about that. But just absolutely a football hero, and I saw you tweeted because he originally from Kansas, right?
Also a Kansan, and played at KU, and by all accounts, just a really remarkable gentleman in addition to being a great player.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I always like to go to the beginning. So talk about growing up. What kind of music did your family listen to?
I guess I was fairly primed for Bruce because there was a lot of Johnny Cash on in my household. And you wouldn't call Johnny rock, but I think Bruce carries on a lot of the traditions of Johnny.
I absolutely agree with that.
My dad was also a huge CCR fan, and Simon and Garfunkel. My dad's favorite song is "The Boxer" from Bridge Over Troubled Water, so we heard that record a lot. And then I I remember a lot of the year "Will the Circle Be Unbroken" came out. We took a trip to Colorado and drove just drove everywhere and listened to that record on a loop. So that music is also really ingrained in my head. That kind of, I don't know, back then they used to call it old timey music, but you call it
Yeah.
bluegrass, Americana, whatever.
Did you watch Ken Burns' documentary on country western country music?
Yes, yeah, yeah. They talked about those sessions a lot. I like that stuff.
They did. I thought that was just a brilliant documentary, and in, you, it is. I thought it was interesting the to kind of give a similar, like, um, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and you kind of build on comics from that to
Hmm.
see, the the Carter family and Jimmy Rogers, and how everything flowed from that. That
Right.
when you talk about how even modern, like a Marty Stewart, was directly from that. You can connect to the dots on that. I thought it was amazing. I'm a
Yeah.
big Nitty Gritty Dirt Band fan as well.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Um, so when you started getting into high school and getting a little bit older, did your musical taste change? When did you find your own musical voice?
Probably. So the earliest stuff that I loved that I knew my dad would have liked, but I never was exposed to it through him. I became a real Buddy Holly junkie when I was in high school, and then I had my big Beatles phase.
What
Uh,
led you to Buddy? Was it the movie?
I actually no, I don't think so. I think I loved him before that movie came out, um, and I can't honestly tell you. I think I had a greatest hits album, and by the time I
Yeah,
was done, I had that box set,
sure.
the complete Buddy Holly on vinyl, which in the intervening years I lost that, but I acquired another one because it was kind of dear to me.
Yeah.
And I still, when I'm really stuck and feeling kind of like I don't have any roots in the world, I put on Buddy, and that just somehow that connects me with my surroundings every time. It's just his stuff seems so pure to me.
I discovered him because of the movie, and
Hmm.
I agree. I have a couple of his CDs, and like they did a remastered of a CD, I think like in the early 80s that they did, and I remember just wearing that CD out,
Yeah.
just everything, and then to bring it back, right, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band did several covers of Buddy Holly songs, like their version of Rave On. I just
Hmm.
adore. It's
Yeah.
just so full of energy, and that's and we certainly know that Bruce has a lot of love for Buddy's music.
Right.
Yeah,
I think all those guys that we grew up that um, who were contemporaries or putting out music when we were formative like that, they all worship Buddy. From the Beatles to Bruce, he was just such a touchstone for all those people. And you have to point out that because he didn't live very long, it helps develop this extra special connection. I think that he represents all this potential as well, um, that we get to create in our mind about where would Buddy have been headed, and it's terribly sad that we don't have more of his music, but it helps turn him into a myth that can build him up bigger than he even was. I think.
yeah. I remember um, George R. R. Martin did a series, and other writers, Melinda Snodgrass, Wild Cards, that
Hmm.
series,
I
and then
remember that.
one of them, there was a short story that Buddy Holly had not died in the plane crash,
Oh,
and
cool.
that they had him perform, and he ended up having that gene as well. But
Uh-huh.
I've often, I think that's an interesting thought about if he had not passed away, what kind of career would he have had? Because it seems like he was really pushing and musical boundaries and was such a gifted artist.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think
It's
that's
interesting. I was just playing his apartment demos for my wife the other night, and those things are so pure. It's just him and his guitar.
yeah,
But if you listen to the last sessions he was involved in, um, very string heavy,
yes,
none of those cricket style vocals, you know.
no,
That's why I'm so offended by that. Norman Petty put together a version of Peggy Sue Got Married after he died. That's just
right,
almost all backup vocals, and it's just, oh, I can't stand it because I just don't think that's where Buddy was headed. I think he
no.
was headed into more,
It's like
I
True
don't
Love
know.
Ways and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. That's great. You mentioned earlier that someone gave you the river in high school. As far as you can tell, that's your earliest exposure to Bruce?
I believe so, and I don't think I was quite ready for it. Um, I don't think I was old enough to relate to the stories he was telling.
Absolutely.
It struck me as a little dark. It is pretty dark.
It is.
Um, and and so I appreciated it. Then I went, okay, yeah, I don't know. And then I got exposed again when Nebraska came out, and I was closer to ready. And then I was living with a guy who played Born in the USA all the time, and we all loved that record. And my buddy just played it, and I never got tired of it. And then eventually we'll probably get to talking about shows, and that's around the time I had my first Bruce show that didn't happen, and that's a story in
Oh,
and of
good.
itself.
Yeah, I want to hear that. You know, I tell the story. My first musical obsession, I graduated in high school in '77. You know, I was a top 40 radio kid.
Hmm.
You know, went through, Elton John and Queen and Barry Manilow and all the, you know, Eagles and all this other stuff. But my first true obsession was when I bought an 8-track Endless Summer of the Beach Boys and just became obsessed
Mm,
with them. Just
yeah.
every Beach Boy 8-track I could find, because back then it was 8 tracks. And when I bought Pet Sounds, I didn't get it. I wasn't
Hmm.
ready for it. And then later came back to it and went, oh my goodness, how did I not understand what
Right?
this
Yeah.
was, right? So I think the same thing. One quick story. I was at one show, I think it was Nashville, and somebody had a sign that said, "Today's my 19th birthday, play the river." And we're like, "Do you know what the river is?"
Right.
I'm like, this is not a song to celebrate your birthday.
Right.
I mean, just because it mentions 19th birthday, I just don't know if woohoo, hey, let's celebrate. So, well, so tell me the story of the show that didn't happen.
So this was 85, I guess. It was when the Born in the USA tour came to Kansas City. I was living in Lawrence, Kansas, a college town. Kind of not going to class very much. So, and we had my roommates and I had a shaky, shady friend who was going to get us tickets. And he had a girlfriend they were very explosive couple. And I was a friend of hers and somewhat a friend of his. And they were always fighting. And we'd been over there once to confront him, like, look, where are these tickets? We gave you money. And like, screaming. And so anyway, the night of the show, we still don't have tickets. And a knock on our apartment door, and it's John, this guy who's supposed to give us the tickets, and his girlfriend Cheryl, and they burst in and they're screaming and crying, and he throws the tickets on a table and says, "There's your tickets." But they're having this big blow up, and I don't feel like I can leave this girl with this guy, and so I don't know what to do. But finally, I said, "Guys, I'm not going. Take my car." They didn't have a car. Take my car, go to the show, scout my ticket if you can, whatever. This is just not going to happen. So they head out to the show. Somehow the explosive guy gets outside of my apartment and starts pounding on my door. I tell him if he keeps pounding, I'm going to call the cops. He keeps pounding. I call the cops. So turns out he has an outstanding warrant, so he gets arrested. So now I haven't gotten to go to the show. The cops have come to my house, arrested this guy. I'm stuck with this girl in my apartment who I'm not dating, and I'm trying to console her. Around that time, my girlfriend calls from another town to tell me that she's breaking up with me. So,
Wow.
and then my roommates call from the concert to say that they're going to be late getting home because they burn out the clutch on my car and they got to get a ride.
You were living a Springsteen song that night. I mean, like, you know.
And then they come home, they tell me my car's busted. I got no girlfriend. They got busted trying to scalp my ticket, so they could only get face value. They had me like $40. And they tell me the tickets were amazing. It was like second row. It was the best thing we ever seen. I was like, Jesus Christ.
That is so sad.
So I learned that night that I am not a suicidal guy because just about everything went wrong, and I was still sitting there like, well, I don't know. Sorry. What can you do? And I took that as a sign that maybe Bruce and I were not meant to happen live.
Okay.
And I did not see him until my buddy Jason Aaron, who's a comic book writer, took me. He ended up with an extra ticket to the Magic Tour. And I finally saw Bruce sitting a little bit behind the stage in Kansas City. And that was amazing. And I'm glad I got to see him once with Clarence because then I saw him one more time. I took my family to see him on the Wrecking Ball. Did he tour with Wrecking Ball?
Yes, in Kansas.
Yeah. In Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
And that was with Clarence's nephew, is it? Is that
yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a tour. They were doing this amazing tribute to Clarence in E Street Shuffle, if I remember right. Does that sound right?
Yeah, 10th Avenue Freeze Out, where they go. Yeah. They go when the big man joined the band and they stop and they play, film of him and everything.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
So only seen him twice, and then that aborted attempt that was sad.
So, I'm going to My Boss Time, the website that you go, and it looks like it was November 2012 at the Sprint Center there in Kansas City.
Okay.
Yeah. I was there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I asked the question. My buddy Sam and I had gone up there together, and I'm like, if you live in Kansas City, are you beaten down by someone doing Kansas City? Like rolling your eyes, going, really? Like when someone makes a comment about Texans wearing a cowboy hat or riding a horses, we kind of go, yeah. Or are you thrilled? And the audience went crazy when he played Kansas City.
I know I still get a kick out of it, so yeah, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. I mean, they were just thrilled. That was a good show.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
And I was really glad to get to take my kids to see him. That was cool.
That's nice. That's really cool. Yeah. So the two times, but I could see why. You're like, okay, me and Bruce, I'll listen to his music by far, but this is bad things happen when I try to go to a Bruce show. That's amazing. As you started getting more into his music, what do you think about his music spoke to you? What about it made you a fan?
Probably the first album I sat down and really went, oh shit, I'm being moved by that. Like, I like stuff that makes me feel. And Nebraska, I could relate to those people in a way I hadn't related to his other material, just partially. I mean, my dad had once seen Charles Starkweather. Is that the guy's name?
I believe so, yes.
The killing spree guy. My dad had been to a prison in his role as a principal or something. I don't know. Anyway, and somebody said, hey, there's Charles Darwin. So these are Midwest people. I felt more connected to those stories. And I had gotten a little older. I was an angsty, 18-year-old, probably when I discovered Nebraska, something like that. And it just moved me incredibly, and I was stuck after that. I love Born in the USA, and Tunnel of Love I think is maybe his most underappreciated record. I still pop that one on quite a bit. I guess maybe you can speak to this. I think maybe hardcore Bruce fans still are stung that it's not an E Street record. Is that true to some extent?
I've had a couple of people talk about it. Um, One guy says you need to have had your heart broken a couple of times
Hmm.
before you can appreciate Tunnel of Love.
Hmm.
I think the synth gets some people. Same thing on, Born in the USA. It got
Hmm.
overplayed. Um, on Someone asked me, on like Quora, that website where you can ask anyone anything, and they said, if you could go to dinner with Bruce and discuss any one album, would it be? And
Hmm.
I said I would probably pick Tunnel of Love, just
Cool.
because all that's what's going on. I think I honestly do think it is a story of a marriage breaking apart. I think it
Yeah.
is
Right.
him dealing with the fame of, almost sudden he became Bruce Springsteen, quotes, like
Hmm.
before, when Born in the USA. I don't think he'd ever thought he would be that massive, and I think that was an adjustment to him.
Right.
And so, yeah, I agree. I think that's a really lovely album that a lot of people may not appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so absolutely.
So anyway,
Yeah,
back to Nebraska for a
yeah,
second. To this day, Atlantic City is my favorite Bruce song. That it kills me every time. I never get tired of it. It hits me just as hard.
yeah,
I think it was only a decade ago where I really understood what the hell he was saying, not the words. It and I feel so done. Sometimes I just allow songs to wash over me for
sure.
decades,
Yeah,
and I'm into the vibe. And then I really heard that guy saying, maybe everything that dies someday comes back. And I was shit. What he's saying is he may not make it through this, and he's rationalizing to himself,
yeah,
And then the song just changed completely for me. I love it. And I am sad. I do wish I'd seen him more because I've never seen that one live, having
yeah,
only seen him twice. He did.
yeah.
And I love the way that song has evolved into that big live performance with that
Oh,
kind of new riff that they do in it.
oh, it's just beautiful, and you know, of it has become an E Street song, even though it was on Nebraska, right? And they do a great job, and there's been tons of great versions of it.
Yeah.
They have done amazing. So the, my story about Atlantic City is a couple years ago, we were going to New Orleans to celebrate my birthday.
Mm.
I was turning 59, and I'm fine, but in context, I was in the middle. I had colon cancer, and so I was in the middle of getting
Oh, wow.
chemo, and
Yeah.
so we wanted to celebrate. So we went to New Orleans, and it was one of the good weeks.
Yeah.
You have 2 crappy weeks of chemo, a week off, and then 2 more crappy weeks
Right.
of chemo and everything. So it was a good week, and so we're in French Street, um, Frenchman Street, not the French Quarter, but
Hmm.
where Treme, the TV series Treme, talked a lot, and there's a
Hmm.
lot of clubs there, and it isn't as touristy. And we went and we're at this little club, I think the Spotted Cat, and so there's little musicians. It's in the afternoon. It was a singer and a guitarist, and they had someone playing a stand-up piano. And so they were taking a break, and they were passing the hat. And Linda, who's my wife, looked over and go ahead. And the lady's like, what? I'm like, well, I'm a massive Bruce Springsteen fan, and so she's making fun of me because I'm going to ask you if you can play any Bruce Springsteen.
Hmm.
And she goes, "Oh, Atlantic City is one of my favorite songs. I'll do
Ah.
Atlantic City for you." And she did. She did, and and it was just. In fact, I took my phone and recorded her doing it because it was such. Um, it was so unexpected. She was like, "Oh, Atlantic City is one of my favorite songs. I'll be glad to
That's
do that
great.
for you."
Yeah.
And then Linda looked over like, "Okay, you win, you win." you know, that's awesome. Um,
Great.
so
By the way, I have
yeah,
a question because I
yeah,
just looked up while we were talking. It was easy to go to the wiki page and see the tour. So it was
yeah.
November the 19th, 1984, the show in Kansas City I didn't get to go to.
Wow.
And he was in Dallas 6 nights later. Did you see him in '84 in Dallas,
No,
or were you not
no.
there yet?
So see, um, I to give you my backstory, right? I grew up in Louisiana. My dad was in the army. We moved around a lot, but when he retired, we moved. My grandparents lived in a small town called Rose Pine, Louisiana, which is just north of, about 60 miles north of Lake Charles, which just got
Okay.
hit by the hurricane. And
Yeah, right.
so the heel of Louisiana's boot. And, we got Willie Nelson, we got Kenny Rogers. I mean, we did not get big bands in Lake
Right.
Charles as I was growing up. And so graduated high school in 77, was not even aware. In fact, I've told the story. I was at a barber shop once, and I can't remember if it was Time or Newsweek, but the cover when he was on, and they said that, you know, greatest rock star, and I was like, who's this guy? Have they
Right.
never heard of Elton John? Have they never heard of, like, who are this? So I did not really understand Bruce. I was dating um, a girl, and we were at a concert, and they played. I forgot who we were going to see, and they were playing "Darkness on the Edge of Town" before the show, and she's like, "I really like that." And when I went to her house and she was playing the album and I didn't get it. And then I started dating who's now my wife, Linda, in 1980. She had a friend named Lisa who went to school on the East Coast, and she came back talking about Bruce Springsteen, how amazing he was. And, I bought The River and, liked Hungry Heart, but didn't really pay attention to it. And like everyone else, I bought Born in the USA and just bought Tonal Love, but I wasn't a
Yeah.
fanatic till 2002 when they did that after the towers fell. They did that telethon
Hmm.
where they did My City of Ruins, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I went, God, that's beautiful. And I bought the Rising CD, kind of listened to it, didn't do a lot, but 2002, The Rising in Dallas was the first show I went to.
Oh, cool.
Just had
Okay.
never had a chance to go before for just various reasons. Couldn't afford it. He wasn't anywhere close to me. We moved to Dallas in '84, but like '86, and so just didn't do it. And when 2002, that was it.
Yeah.
2002, I felt like I'd
Yeah.
opened a door to a world. You'll appreciate this, right? Like you, every comic is someone's first comic. And so
Hmm.
therefore, if you're writing, whether it's Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, the Lone Ranger, whoever you want, you've got to make it inclusive enough so they understand what's going on.
Right.
And but if you pick up Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, or Justice League, you're like, there's all these stories that I don't know what's going on. That's how I felt at the Bruce show. I was like, I love what I'm doing, but there's so much I don't know.
Right.
And that's when I became obsessed or passionate, depending on if you talk to my wife, it's obsessed. If you talk to me, it's passionate. And that's when I came. And so,
Cool.
much like I say, the analogy is if you're watching a football game and someone misses an extra point early in the game, you chase that point the rest of the game. I feel like I'm
Yes. Yeah.
chasing Springsteen concerts, because I've missed that one. I'm like, I'm at 16, and I'm like, okay, when can I get another one? What can I get another one? So yeah,
That's a great
absolutely.
analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
By the
Um,
way, just so you
yeah,
know, I fact checked myself and I was full of shit. The
yeah,
Buddy Holly movie came out in '78, the one with Gary Busey,
yeah.
and that might well have kickstarted because I probably didn't get super into until about '80.
Okay.
So yeah, could be.
Well, and it's not. It's okay if it wasn't. It just that's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
led to me,
No, it's a
right?
good
Like,
point because
yeah,
it sounded like you were a little older than me.
yeah,
I'm 55, and
yeah,
so I was doing the math
yeah,
like,
yeah,
no, you might be right.
yeah. Because I'm 61. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so yeah, absolutely. Um, so the reason I reached out to you, not only because of Ron, but you talked about Western Stars.
Mm.
So, and you shared something about, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? But something about that watching that movie, revitalizes you or does something. So talk to me a little bit about your feelings about the movie, and as a fan, what did you think of the music?
So that first single came out, Jesus, which is the first one? Oh, terrible.
Um,
I don't remember.
Yeah,
I'll,
Sundown, right? No. Oh yeah. See,
uh,
we're horrible fans. No, we're not.
it's
It's
not
because it's
Tucson
late.
Train.
No.
It's
Yeah. Hello Sunshine. Yeah. Hello.
thank you.
Yes.
Very Glenn Campbell-y.
Oh, so Glenn Campbell.
And I'm a big buddy, Gary. Okay, hold on.
Yes.
A big Glenn Campbell fan, and I love that sound so much.
I did
And
too.
so I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yes.
Is he doing this kind of AM radio throwback for this record? And that song, the lyrics to that song didn't move me a lot. But then when I started hearing the whole album, the gap between Bruce and I is 16 years, I guess.
Right.
And that's a huge gap when I'm 18.
Yes.
When I'm 55, I can't see the mortality that Bruce is staring down, but I'm on the other end of the tunnel,
Yes.
And so I could more easily relate to these songs about men at the end of their lives reevaluating their mistakes and what they're grateful for. All that kind of stuff really spoke to me. And every time I talk about the record, I say, look, I am biased because this is a record for largely men of a certain age. It doesn't mean, an 18-year-old woman couldn't appreciate it, but it really speaks to guys like us who have been through a lot and are prone to looking back and thinking what we might have done different and how we can move forward in a more healthy way. And the movie is so powerful because Bruce takes all that insight that he brought to his autobiography and everything he's gained from therapy, and he just throws it right on the screen. And when he says in that movie, for 30 years, if I loved you, I would find a way to hurt you. I just think that's one of the most moving things I've ever heard somebody of that status in showbiz admit. And I thought it was so powerful. And then you've seen the film, I assume.
Yes, absolutely.
Just to see him standing there looking so comfortable and his voice sounding so perfect at that age and leading that orchestra, it really just blew me away.
Yeah.
So I find that about half the time now when I go to listen to the record, I listen to the movie soundtrack just because I like the sound of it so much. And I love hearing how sharp his voice is in that live setting.
Absolutely. A couple points. We go to the movie, and my wife's like, "Yeah, let's go. We'll make a date night of it." And her sister and her sister's husband, Mary Clay, we got married the same summer, so we have been, Clayton and I have become brothers just because we've been married to sisters, right, for over 35 years. So the four of us go, and we go through the film, and at one point Linda reaches over and whispers, "How jealous are you of those people in the barn?"
Right,
I'm like,
buddies who were hanging out. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you cannot imagine how jealous I am. And then at the end, when they run the credits and they list them, they're in the credits. I'm like, oh my goodness! Not only did they get to attend, but now then they actually have an IMDb. They can claim.
Right.
Yeah. My parents.
And if anybody ever says, "Oh, bullshit, you weren't there," they can go, "Hold on."
Yeah, hold on. Yep. My parents, my mom and dad loved Glenn Campbell. We grew up. My dad loved Johnny Cash, but my mom especially loved Glenn Campbell. And several years ago, before Glenn had died, in 2008, he had released I don't know if you've ever heard it, but Meet Glenn Campbell, which is an album where he recorded Times Like These, Sing, Walls, modern songs in that Jimmy Webb kind of, late 60s, early 70s mode. And
I think it was a little after that. So the Replacements are probably my favorite band ever.
Yeah.
And he recorded one or two Paul Westerberg songs.
Right. Yeah, Sadly Beautiful.
Yes.
Yes. And
such
and so I just loved him that. And so um, hearing that style, I agree with you. Hello Sunshine, it was did that, and then to have him do, Rhinestone Cowboy
Oh, I
is
freaked
just,
out.
yeah, just so wonderful. Um, and I was greedy. I was like, couldn't you have picked like three or four more, Springsteen, E Street Band songs to do, kind of like you did with the Seeger sessions,
Hmm.
where you could have just done that, because I was greedy, because that band was so amazing, and
Hmm.
I agree with you, the setting of the barn, and then him sharing so much of himself.
Yeah.
I think all the time, where he says, "So you walk on through the dark because that's where the next morning
Right.
is so, especially in this time, that we're going through so much crap, and we're going through so much bad times, and in fact, I had a beautiful fan, said that she didn't like Western Stars because it wasn't the album she wanted from him.
Yeah.
She wanted an angry political album, and we had a great discussion about how it wasn't what she wanted. And my point was, at 70, I'm just thrilled that he's giving us new music,
Right.
and if in this creative way is amazing. And when you throw in the autobiography, the Broadway show, and this,
Yeah.
it's a really strong trilogy of telling his life.
It is. It's cool. I feel a little honored to be talking to you on his birthday.
Yes, absolutely. I think that is very nice.
And
Uh,
I posted a little thing about his birthday on Facebook today, and I posted a quote that I remember from when Jimmy is it Iovine,
yeah, yeah,
Iovine, I don't know,
yeah.
was on Howard Stern several years ago, and they were talking about Bruce, and he said this amazing thing. He said, "You don't have anything that Bruce Springsteen wants." In other words, nobody can tempt him to veer off his course because he doesn't care about the showbiz trappings that somebody might offer him. He's on this mission to tell as many stories with his music as he can in the way that he feels is the most powerful at the time. And you can't, he's got everything he needs, you know?
Yeah.
He does it on his terms because he doesn't have to answer to anybody. And I'm
Well,
just so grateful that he keeps doing it.
I had, he just put out last week, Letter to You, a new
Yeah.
single. He's announcing the new album. I personally like the new single. I thought it was great. And I had a couple people like, "Oh, this is crap," and I can't believe why do you record an album in 5 days? This is ridiculous. Now then, Bruce tells us it was four, and they the fifth day. But
Right.
you know, I look at it as, why would he been there, done that? Like, okay, we've spent months making an album for
Right.
fun. Let's see what happens if we get us all in the studio, and let's try to put a clock on it. What can we do if we do it quickly?
Right.
I think that's
Didn't it
beautiful.
feel didn't it feel liberating to you? I read the Rolling Stone thing
Yeah,
yesterday, and I love the notion of him just saying, "Screw it, let's go in. All I bring is a guitar demo,
yeah,
and you guys do your parts. You know what you're fucking doing."
yeah, exactly. And yes, I found it very liberating, and I think very, I'm like, I appreciate the fact the guys are going, yeah, we can do this.
Hmm.
Why couldn't we do that? And it was, because as you said, I have nothing. He's got nothing to prove.
Right.
I've done this. We, y- um, if Born to Run isn't one of the, I will not say Born in the Run is the greatest rock song ever written, but it's in
Hmm.
the discussion,
Yeah.
right? Like I heard that a long time ago. Like when someone was talking about Joe Montana, and I'm a cat, I live in Dallas, right? But they
Right.
said if Joe Montana isn't the greatest quarterback of all time, he's in the discussion. You
Right.
can't have the discussion without discussing him. And I think that, what do you got to prove?
Yeah.
Um, and I think, um, their narration and the not only are the performances absolutely beautiful, but the little scenes between and them putting, where home movies of him and Patty and old footage and adding that. It is a beautiful film.
Yeah, I was very impressed by it, and
Yeah,
I think with somebody being less honest than he was being,
yeah,
I think there was a possibility that those segments could have been pretentious. The slow mo walking through the horse
yeah,
barn, but when he's laying out the kind of truth he is,
yeah,
you can't judge him. Okay, the director wanted him to look cool, fine, but at the same time, he's absolutely bearing his soul
yeah,
in those songs, and then personally, and I love that connection that he builds. He says, "Here's what I've been through."
yeah.
That helps inform these songs about other characters. And so when you listen to the songs about other characters, you're they're all imbued with that uh, struggle that he's been through.
I really feel, and I've mentioned this before, Western Stars almost feels like a collection of Elmore Leonard short stories,
Yes,
or
right.
that weathered story, and they're great people. Um,
I think all of Bruce's work, all of his best work, lends you to pondering the rest of that character's life.
yeah,
And Western Stars is really good at that. I mean, that one song about the stuntman, I think you only know it's a stuntman because of the title. I mean, he
right.
mentions making a movie, but um, and it just leads you to diving into that person's life in a really interesting way that
Hmm.
I never get tired of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tweeted just a few minutes ago. I guess back in 2016, Literary Hub did a fake article that was all about, and the premise is if Bruce Springsteen wrote a short story collection. And
Mm.
they said everything that dies someday comes back is the
Ah,
new collection of short stories that's coming out. And and
awesome.
they talk about that. Um, it's a collection of short stories that he wrote. And I said, if only. How cool would this be?
Yeah.
Your friend Ron mentioned he was on the show about a month or so ago, and I was asking him about these, from my home to yours, the Springsteen, that E Street Radio. He's doing the DJ sessions, and
I have
Ron.
Sirius, and I don't think I've heard one yet.
Oh,
they're probably on the app. I can probably
yes,
get
they
them that
are.
way.
If you get them on the app, you can get
Cool.
them. They're on demand. But Ron said, "Okay, we know he's a brilliant storyteller. Why are we shocked that he can tell a story
Yeah,
by
right.
weaving, stories along with with 45s and other songs?" Yeah, to celebrate his birthday,
Yeah.
they re-showed them all. They replayed them today, but they're on the app, and yes, it
Oh,
is
cool.
worth
Yeah.
listening to.
It's
Um,
like, have you ever had the thought that he would probably be a really effective actor if he wanted to be?
yes, I do. Like if he had the acting bug the way like Elvis wanted to make movies,
Right.
and I think he has no interest in that. I was
Yeah.
shocked when he was on
T-
Turner Classic,
TCM.
yeah, yeah, TCM, where the guy was talking about, they had the films he picked out, which way they had great films, and then he talked about I don't like my voice. That's why I would never
Oh,
do an
yeah.
album of like covers. And as a fan, I'd love for you to do a Johnny Cash, album, or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this one here, just some different things. Yeah, I absolutely do think. And um, I've talked to other writers. The honesty he had in that autobiography, that how much he shared about himself is just pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I
yeah,
don't think you can be a truly great singer if you're not an actor at heart, because if you're not feeling that character when you're singing it, you it, you're not going to move the audience, and that's what it's about.
yeah. All right, so I promise we won't spend long on this, but I told you before we started recording, I absolutely adored your series on the Lone Ranger. There were some great stories there. Um, you just share with me a little bit about how you got selected and what was your mindset getting to write this iconic character?
So I have to confess, I came into it as not a big fan, and
Okay.
what happened was I'd done a lot of work at Dynamite. I'd
Yeah.
written the Green Hornet series. I wrote a Kato series, and basically Nick Barucci, the publisher there, brought me in because of my Kevin Smith connection. He
Right.
thought, well, Kevin was writing these. Now Andy, people will see Andy's name, and
Yeah.
Nick is a smart guy. He knows how to market stuff.
Sure.
So I wrote a lot of that stuff, and then he said, "How would you like to write a Death of Zorro series?"
Oh, okay.
Oh, fantastic! I'm going to get to kill off Zorro. I'm going to have 4 issues about his poignant struggle, and then his noble death, and the issue 4. And he goes, "No, he actually dies in the first issue, and the Lone Ranger has to figure out why." And I'm like, "What? Why
Wait a
is it called
minute.
Death of Zorro? What is
Yeah.
this?" And I was like, "Crap! I got her. I mean, I knew Clayton Moore. That
Yeah.
was about it." And so I handed in my first script, and my editor said, better try again on the Lone Ranger part. And I was like, okay. So I reread the 25 issues that had come before us, their first Dynamite series, and I went, okay, I think I need to stop approaching this just as what I remember from Clayton Moore. I need to approach it as more of this, slightly more serious, vengeful presence in the West and all that. So I got through the Death of Zorro, kind of figuring out who Lone Ranger and Tonto were and what I wanted to say with them. And then they said, would you like to now do our new Lone Ranger series? And I was like, okay. And I felt a lot of pressure because I thought those series before me was really good. And they are,
It was a good series.
they're important characters. You don't want to get them wrong. So my first issue was pretty good. I felt like a little stiff. And then the second issue, it just clicked. And somewhere along the way, somewhere in writing 1 and 2, I realized that what I wanted to write about was Tonto and Lone Ranger and why they've chosen each other and what they mean to each other and what that relationship tells us about them and about the Old West and all that. So I tend to hang all my stories on a grand theme of some kind, and hopefully it never beats you over the head, but it's there. It informs me as I'm working on it. And to me, all my stories, that's what they're about at their heart. They're like, why did these two guys choose each other? What do they each get out of it? How do they prop each other up at the right time? All that stuff. And then I just hung on that as much cool old Western stuff as I could think. I mean, some of them are big 6 issue arcs where I get to write a grand thing. Some are just quick hitters, and I pretend I've been called in to write an episode of the Rifleman, and so I got to tell all kinds of stories about the West. I got to bring him into Kansas and tell stories about places that mean a lot to me. And it's just stuff I'm really proud of. And the arc, I'm going on a bit here, forgive me. The arc I'm really
Please.
proud of is our second arc tells a story that I don't think had ever been told before, which was why Tonto was alone to find the Lone Ranger. Like, why wasn't he with a tribe? Wasn't he with a family? Why was he roaming around all by himself to find the Lone Ranger? So we told that backstory, which led us into their bond a little stronger. And so, yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that stuff because it means a lot to me.
Yeah, I really the humanity and the idea that they are this bond and friendship and like we were just talking before I we hit record that you're mentioning your wife is a big Doctor Who fan,
Mm-hmm.
and I think when the very best Doctor Who episodes is when the people on the TARDIS, the Doctor and his companions, are a family, and
Yeah,
there is a reason why they hang together and do that. And I think that's what you did is there was a sense of family and why you know Tonto isn't a sidekick. He is his partner.
right.
He is there.
Absolutely.
There is a reason why these two guys are pursuing what they're pursuing. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was really, really well done. And now that I'm like, I'm gonna have to dig up my back issues, or if you go to reread those stories again because it was just a lot of fun.
Cool. And if listeners want to find that second arc, I'm proud of all our stuff, but
Yeah.
especially that second arc, it's called Native Ground. So if you search Lone Ranger Native Ground on Amazon and places like that, I think you can still get that trade.
Yeah, I think you are. I was looking at that, and so yes, and I really, really urge it. Um, what are you working on now?
Well, it's been a weird time. I had an inking gig, but it kind of fell apart with our world
Sure.
status. And so this movie came out in April, and I was kind of consumed by that hype for a while, and then I kind of shamelessly allowed myself to ride that wave for a little longer than I should have, maybe. Just kind of like,
Well, hard not to.
exhale.
Yeah.
And now I've got a couple writing projects in development. One is out to a publisher. I'm working on a screenplay, and that'll take a while. And then Phil Hester and I are my longtime art buddy. We're I'm inking a Superman thing that he penciled right now that's just part of DC's winter event, which Ron Mars is actually writing. So,
Ah, that's kind of it's all coming together, right?
yes, full
That's
circle.
great. Yes, yeah, great. Um, any chance Phil's a Springsteen fan? I can hit the trifecta and
I don't know. I don't think like I am.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
an appreciator, but not a fan, I would say.
yeah. It looks like Jimmy Pilato is, and I was like, hey, Jimmy, you should join me on the podcast to talk about that. That's fun. That's great. Well, I will keep looking for that, and yes, I will include a link in the show notes of your Amazon page. So if people want to check
Cool.
it, I think they're great stories and everything else.
And
Yeah.
can you handle one shameless plug?
Oh,
while we're here?
please.
I do have a Patreon that I haven't been doing very long, but I post artwork, and I'm posting a novel there kind of on the fly. And there are a couple Lone Ranger things on there. There's like a script that you can study and things like that. So fortunately, my name is spelled weird. It's Ande. So if you search Ande Parks, Andy with an E, you'll find me on every platform, Patreon, Twitter, all that stuff.
All right, very nice, very good. Andy, what should I have asked you that I didn't?
Oh boy.
So, and Backstreets Magazine just did a very nice article about the podcast, and
Mm-hmm.
he, Ken, who wrote the article, shared the reason why I asked that. And I always feel bad sharing this story, but gosh, a couple of years ago I had a guy on, and it was a good interview. It was,
Mm-hmm.
he was okay. I mean, not as filled with as many stories as you, but it was a fine interview. And so about 40 minutes into it, we're out of stories, and so I thank him, and and we're wrapping up. Afterwards, I quit recording, and he says, "Oh, next time I'm on, I'm gonna have to tell you the time I got drunk with the E Street Band."
Oh
I'm like,
shit.
exactly. Like, what? How do you not lead with the story, right? So, I now ask that question. Hey, did you ever get
That's
drunk with the E
amazing.
Street Band?
No, the closest I do have some friends in the band world that
yeah.
will be impressive to some people. Los Lobos is one of my very favorite bands.
Oh, yeah.
And if you like Bruce, I think most people would like Los Lobos. They're brilliant musicians who tell
Absolutely.
similar stories about America, but from a different point of view. And I've gotten to be friends with those guys. Louis Perez is a good friend of mine, and I'm very grateful that the last 2 years I got to go to Chicago for they do Christmas time gigs at the City Winery there, and for like 4 nights in a row.
Oh, nice.
And the last 2 years I've just gone to Chicago and hung out with Louis and seen the band every night. And so no, I'm afraid no personal connection to E Street. Just
Okay.
maybe seeing Los Lobos. I think I saw them do a Bruce cover once, and I can't remember what it was.
Oh, that's great. That sounds good.
God,
All right.
it's killing me.
Yeah. All right. You think you can do this the next time. All
Okay.
right. So, before I let you go, though, got to ask you the Mary question. So,
Yeah.
for those of you who have never heard the podcast before, Jay Armstrong is an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. He teaches his English classes, and every year his seniors in the honors English class, they take Thunder Road and they break it down as a poem. They
Oh,
go through all the lyrics. They discuss the imagery that Bruce used. He compares it to Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken.
cool.
And at the end of the 2 days, he looks at the class and says, "Okay, does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?" So,
Oh,
Andy, that's your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
I don't know what this says about me, but it's never really even occurred to me that she didn't.
No, that most people don't. Most
Really?
people, when I
Okay.
ask the question, they go, "Well, what do you mean? Of course she does. Why are you asking this question?" So,
Yeah,
um,
that's interesting. Does that speak to some kind of built-in optimism in the listener, or yeah, I don't know what to make of that.
well, the first off, when he told me this question, my response was exactly you, like, of course she does. I mean, why
Hmm.
are you even asking the question? Like, the lyrics are, "We're pulling out of here to win." And Jay says,
Hmm.
if you look at the original lyrics, it's "I'm pulling out of here to win." Now, when he does it live, it's
Hmm.
"we." But, I don't, so I'm like, all like, okay. And then I got to start thinking of, The Princess and the Tiger, that short story that you've read in high
Hmm.
school
Yeah.
about like they don't give you the ending. Um, 60% of the people say yes.
Yeah.
But 40% of my listeners, the people who've been on the show, say no.
Those
Uh,
cold-hearted bastards.
yeah, yeah. Some of them say, um, and they, especially if they're a regular listener to the podcast, they know this question is coming, and
Yeah,
they'll
yeah.
go like, you know, he, like one guy said, later when they're both older and he's grown, they do find each other. Um,
Oh.
Another guy, which answered is, well, of course she says yes, because later in Racing in the Street, when she says she sits on her daddy's porch, that's the same porch that she's dancing across.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, oh, did not see that.
Right.
And two of my favorite answers, Andy, is someone said um, that Moonlight Motel
Hmm.
is the end of Thunder Road. That
Oh, that's
he and
awesome.
Mary get
Yeah.
in the car and they've spent their life together, and now then he's mourning her death after
Wow.
they spent a lifetime together. Um, and then one of my favorite answers is the guy said depends. I'm like, okay, depends. He says if the full band is doing Thunder Road, she gets in the car because the
That's
song
a good
ends
answer.
with
Right.
this joy and this power. But if
Right.
he's doing it by himself, acoustical, she
Hmm.
doesn't, because you hear it's kind of sad at the end
Right.
where he does that. So it just depends. So,
That
um,
reminds me of
yeah,
what's the movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman and Meryl Streep? Doubt.
yes,
He did that on the stage, and I heard him interviewed once. I think it was on Fresh Air,
yeah.
and he said he would play it different. Some nights he played it as if he was guilty, and some nights he played it as if he was innocent.
Oh, interesting.
And she had asked him, "Do you know if you did or not?" He said, "Of course." And he said, "I don't know if the audience can tell, but my whole performance is affected by whether I know I did it or I know I'm innocent." And it's subtle, but it informs, everything he does on it. So that's like the reverse. You're
Yeah,
saying, yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
yeah,
Let me ask you a question about
sure.
Bruce performing live that I've always wondered about.
Yeah.
Do you think it seems to me that most of the time when I hear live performances on Sirius, when he does, um, oh, for Christ's sake, the happy song on the river, Hungry Heart,
Okay.
um, do you think he's a little embarrassed by the verse about, leaving his wife and kids in Baltimore, because it seems like he always lets the audience sing that one.
So the story, and I believe this has been verified,
Okay. Have you
is
covered this 100 times?
no,
Forget.
never, no.
Okay.
I've
Okay.
told this story before, but according to Springsteen lore, is that very early when he was just starting to do Hungry Heart, um, he forgot the words one time,
Oh.
and so the audience sang it for him, and
Okay.
then he went, "Oh, okay," and then sang it. So, and you know how um, traditions work because of some kind of weird mistake and happen. So
Mm-hmm.
that is
Yep.
the lore of why he lets them do that first verse, is because early in he forgot the words and they sang it for him, and they
Okay.
kind of did that.
That
Though
makes sense.
I love your theory that because he's now happily married for all these years,
Yeah,
he's like,
right.
oh, I don't know if I want to sing that one. So
I just wondered if you felt
yeah,
like it was kind of hackneyed. Oh, this guy dumping his family.
mhm,
It's too, you know.
yeah,
But the fans love it, so let them have it.
yeah,
Whatever.
exactly. I do know that um, Carl Wilson from the Beach Boys, um, in an interview, um, said, this is of course years ago because now Carl has left us, but he was talking about like a song, like he doesn't do lead on, but Help Me Rhonda. And he
Mm-hmm.
just was tired of singing Help Me Rhonda. Like, if I have to sing background on Help Me Rhonda again, I am just going to just throw up. And all of a
Right.
sudden, in it hit him how much fun this is.
Right.
Um, and then I I love this story, and this tells you how old I am. Linda Ronstadt was on the Tonight Show back when Carson did it, and she was talking about she went and saw Frank Sinatra for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and she was thrilled. She wanted to hear all the songs, and she says, and it kind of woke me up because I'll go, I don't want to do Blue Bayou again. I've done Blue
Right.
Bayou so many times. I'm so tired of doing Blue Bayou. And she goes, and then when I went to see Sinatra, I go, oh, wait, that's what my audience is feeling.
Yeah. Right.
I need to do
Right.
these songs. So you wonder, um, and you like that would be a question I would want to ask Bruce if I ever got a
Right.
chance to interview him. Are there things that you are kind of tired of singing?
I heard
Uh,
him talk about Born to Run once in that context,
yeah,
and he said, if I recall right, he said it was a drag for a while, and then he started to connect it to not just we got to sing this song everybody loves again. He started to connect it to the band's experience
yes,
and what putting that song together meant to them and how hard it was and how big it paid off. And so it became more of a personal benediction. Like, guys, this is our these are our roots. Let's
yeah,
have fun doing it. So he made it more personal in a way that still let him. Because if you sing it, if you hear him sing it live, all the passion is still there.
yeah,
I think he just converted the source of that passion to something that still works for him, so he can get himself excited about doing every night.
yeah. I remember several years ago they did a 60-minute interview with him, and they interviewed the band, and they talked about the set list. Um, you know, you just three letters, BTR. You don't even spell it out, and like
Right,
that was a big deal. And I'm like, that's not a big deal, right? Like he
right,
writes 10th, for 10th Avenue Freeze Out, but
right.
and Little Steven, and I think Little Steven and Niels, or it was two members of the band. I don't remember which one. So
Hmm.
except I know Little Steven was there, and you play it. You've played it thousands of times, and Little Steven made a joke, and one time we're gonna get it right. And he laughs, and Little Steven says he thinks we're joking. He looked over at Niels or Max or whoever it was. He says he thinks we're joking, and so I always wonder about that. I wonder, do
Yeah,
they not feel like they get it right?
right.
I've had this discussion with Springsteen fans that, especially people that have gone to multiple shows. There have been people who have gone to 50, 100 shows, and,
Hmm.
they're like, well, I don't need to sing, I don't need to hear Born to Run again.
Right.
That's a slot that I wish he would give, something from, Incident, or, something from, Tunnel of Love, or,
Yeah.
a thing. And I go back to the phrase, right? Everyone's comic is someone's first comic,
It's
and
somebody's first show.
and
Yeah.
everyone's first show. And if you go to a Bruce Springsteen concert and you don't hear Born to Run, you're going to be disappointed.
Yep. Absolutely.
Um,
And I think if you're tired of it as a fan, you have to do what Bruce has done. You have to convert it to some other kind of energy in your mind.
I
Like,
agree.
yeah.
Now I
By the way,
do.
there were two
Yeah,
things that happened really memorable the first time I saw him.
yeah.
By the way, Magic remains one of my favorite.
Oh, I
Uh,
love
it's
Magic.
old now, but
Yeah,
I put that album on a lot.
yeah.
He opened with Cynthia, which I guess he never does.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And my wife is that's her name, and she's still pissed off to this day that I was there without her.
Okay.
And also, people hold up signs in the crowd.
Yeah,
Somebody held up, and Bruce said it had never happened before. I don't know if he was just bullshitting us.
yeah.
Somebody held up, "Let Max sing."
Oh, how funny.
So Bruce cracked up. He said, "That's a first. Somebody get a mic on this man." So it took him a minute to,
Yeah,
somebody ran out with the mic because he didn't have one. And they did Boys, the Beatles did
yeah.
the Talking About Boys
Oh,
with
how
Max singing.
funny.
Yeah, they
That
jammed
is
that out.
great. I always, gosh, that's a great story. Um, I always, being a big Beach Boy fan, when Girls in Their Summer Clothes was such a
Hmm.
shock to me. I was like, God, he's doing a Brian Wilson song. This
Right.
is amazing. Um, gosh, that's a funny story. Talk about, and I've told this multiple times on the podcast, so listeners, I forgive me repeating it, but he was, it was in Houston, like in 2014. We had driven down from Dallas. We were at Houston show, and it was a good show. It was, pretty long show, and at the end, it was at an outdoor venue, like their version of an auditorium, and
Hmm.
so there's all lawn seating, and there was behind. It was a beautiful. So we're there, and the show had ended, and Linda was going to the restroom, and I was waiting for her outside, and this very drunk lady, "Is it over?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's over." He played, a little over 3 hours.
Right.
It's over? Yeah. He didn't do Born in the USA. Like, yeah, he doesn't often do Born, but it's his biggest hit. How can he not do Born in the USA? And so since then, Andy, anytime I'm at a show and he does Born in the USA, I tweet, and somewhere there's a drunk lady in Houston very happy.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so you already mentioned Andy Parks on social media. Do a search and look for you. This was great. I hope you had a good time.
I really did, and it was needed. I'm on our local school board here, and it's been a
Yes.
stressful week.
Oh, I can imagine.
It's not the most fun volunteer gig these days. So yeah, it was very nice I poured myself a bourbon and Coke, and I've just been chatting about Bruce. It's been very
Very
fun.
nice. What kind of bourbon?
So I don't believe in mixing good bourbon.
Right.
So this is stuff I found that's pretty cheap called Henry McKenna that I
Okay,
just found.
sure.
So
Yeah.
kind
All
of
right.
like a Jim Beam level
Yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah.
All right. So I take it you're a bourbon fan?
Yeah, very much.
Okay, so I may have to edit all this out because my listeners are going, Jesse, I know. So 2012, he's doing the Wrecking Ball tour, and he's
Hmm.
coming nowhere close to Dallas, nowhere close to Dallas. And my wife and I had not gone on a vacation together for years. We'd
Hmm.
either gone with another couple or we had gone with a boy. And so we really want to get on a vacation, just her and I. And so I said, okay, I've got a plan. She goes, what's the plan? Well, in 2011, my father had passed away, and he was buried in Radcliffe, Kentucky, at a veteran cemetery there.
Hmm.
And we had not seen the marker, had not isn't of course available for a while, and so we had not seen the
Yeah.
marker. And I said, okay, here's the plan. I said, we'll leave Dallas, we'll drive up to Kentucky, we'll see Dad's marker, we'll do, and when we were there, for the funeral, she had picked up the Kentucky Bourbon Trail brochure. I'm
Oh,
like,
cool.
okay, so I said, we'll do half the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. I said, we'll drive up. I have a friend Tom Zoller. You may know Tom
Oh
Zoller.
yeah,
Yeah,
he.
yeah,
I've worked with him a couple times. He
yeah,
helped letter parts of my book Capote in Kansas.
yeah,
Good guy.
yeah. So he and I have been friends for years, since '99. He's gone to the house when there was a local Dallas convention. So anyway, we drove all the way to Cleveland, stayed at Tom's house. Bruce was playing in Cleveland. We went to the show. The next day, Tom took us to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We toured that, and then afterwards we drove down and did the second half of the Bourbon Trail and came home.
Awesome.
So we called it our Bourbon and Bruce tour.
That's awesome.
And I've had someone go, that's the most perfect vacation ever.
Really is.
Yeah, because we got to go to all the, we got to go to Four Roses. We got to go to, the Buffalo Trace. We got to see them hand stop the Blantons.
Oh,
We got to go all these different bourbon trails, Jim Beam, Wild Turkey, all these different. It was just amazing. And so so then when he did the second leg of the tour, he was playing in Louisville. Linda's like, get tickets, get tickets. So we drove back and we saw him in Louisville, and
it's
we got to
fantastic.
do, yeah. So Bourbon and Bruce is kind of mixed in Linda's mind. It's like,
Excellent.
yeah, like when she went, she's like, they've got Woodford Reserve bourbon at the
Hmm.
stadium here that we're getting to drink in Louisville. So yeah, so that's very nice.
Oh, I'm jealous. I've never been to any distilleries down there. I got to do that someday.
Oh, Andy, I will tell you, it is beautiful country, like Woodford
Yeah.
Reserve. It's out in the middle of horse country. Um, Maker's Mark is filled with this beautiful campus. So there is not only great scenery, but you get to talk about all the science and the art of making
Yeah.
bourbon. You do tastings, and it's just a wonderful. There's 8 or 9 major distilleries, and if you go to all of them and get your passport stamped, you get a free T-shirt.
Nice.
You mail off your passport, and they send you back a Kentucky Bourbon Trail. So yeah, it's a good vacation. Like if you wanted
Cool.
to spend some time, that's good. All right. Well, I am glad you enjoyed your bourbon and Coke. I am glad you had some fun talking to Bruce. Please, my friend, anytime you want to join me, if you want to promote your next project, let me know. I will absolutely love to have you on and we could talk about it
Great.
whenever you need. And so for now, take care of yourself. And
Will
if
do.
you need anything, listeners, you take care of yourself. Please social distance, wash your hands, wear an effing mask, take care of
It's
yourselves.
it's not that hard, right?
It's not that hard. It really isn't that hard.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
let's be good to each other, and we will talk to you soon.
It's a
Goodbye.
pleasure. Thanks, man.
Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts as well as a Mary Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now who does, you can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference. You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. Set Listing Bruce is part of the Southgate Media podcast group. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.